Welcome back gamers to another JGM Gaming video. In today's video I want to share with you a complete guide on how to deal with Ignis the Furnace Master in Ulduar. We'll be discussing the roles of tanks, healers and DPS, Ignis's abilities and what they do, the mechanics during the boss fight itself and the achievements that are available here. Just a little bit of lore about Ignis now. Ignis the Furnace Master is the Forge Master of Yogg-Saron and can be found at the Colossal Forge in Ulduar. He is responsible for creating and improving the iron armies of Ulduar. The fight against Ignis can be intense and requires good group coordination to overcome, so with that being said, let's get into it. Starting off with role summaries. The fight against Ignis is mostly a tank and spank encounter for the majority of the raid, however there are a few things that people should be aware of. Everybody should stop casting during flame jets and make sure you avoid standing in the Scorch. So now onto the specific roles themselves, starting with tanks. So the main tank will want to tank Ignis close to the water in the middle of the room, either side. You will want to move the boss away from Scorch in order to protect your DPS. The off tank will want to grab iron constructs as soon as possible, and then bring those adds into Scorch, but be careful not to stand in Scorch yourself. Once the add has the molten buff, bring them into the water and then move away from brittle adds to reduce damage taken. Healers will want to be sure to pay extra attention to incapacitated players. They'll take in a lot of damage every second, but if you can keep them alive, they'll receive a large DPS buff. Ranged DPS will want to position yourself so that you can always reach the brittle iron constructs from the off tank in the water. And of course the melee DPS will want to be avoiding the Scorch that we've already mentioned. The raid leader will want to be doing one of four things. 1. If the main tank is poorly positioned during Scorch, call for them to reposition. 2. Whenever a construct spawns, call for the off tank to pick it up. 3. Whenever a player is incapacitated, call for the healers to focus on them. And 4. Call for ranged DPS to kill brittle iron constructs. Moving on now to Ignis's abilities. As mentioned before, this fight is quite straightforward and is mainly a tank and spank with little strategy required. Most of the tactics will be handled by the off tank. Here are Ignis the Furnace Master's notable abilities to be aware of and how you can effectively deal with them. Starting with flame jets. Ignis stomps on the ground, causing flames to shoot up from the ground and damaging anyone caught in the blast. The attack also interrupts spellcasting for 6 seconds. The ability has a 2.7 second casting time, so it's important for casters to bear this in mind when they're casting a spell during this time in order to avoid being interrupted. The next ability is Slag Pot. Ignis charges at a random player and throws them into a pot of molten slag, incapacitating them for 10 seconds and dealing fire damage every second. If the player can survive the heat, they'll receive a 150% haste buff for 10 seconds after escaping. Healers should prioritize keeping the incapacitated player alive, and it may be helpful to have a dedicated healer just for this task. Holy Paladins can also use Beacon of Light on a tank to also let them effectively heal the player in the pot whilst also maintaining the tank. The next ability is Scorch. Ignis channels a jet of flame that deals fire damage to anyone in front of him and scorches the ground within 13 yards of him. This scorched earth continues to deal damage to anybody standing in it and also superheats any iron constructs that are caught in it. The main tank should therefore drag the boss away from the scorched earth to allow all DPS to continue attacking without taking damage from the fire. The off tank should drag iron constructs into the scorched earth to take advantage of its effects. The next ability is summoning the iron constructs, so Ignis will activate iron constructs one by one, starting around 20 seconds into the fight. These constructs should be picked up by the off tank and brought into the scorched earth, created by Scorch. While there, the constructs will receive a stacking debuff called Heat, which stacks up to 10 times. At 10 stacks of heat, the debuff changes to Molten, increasing the construct's attack speed and dealing constant fire damage to anybody within 7 yards of it. Once they have the Molten debuff, they can be brought into the water, changing the debuff to Brittle and stunning them for 20 seconds. Brittle iron constructs can be shattered by dealing at least 5,000 damage to them in a single hit. This will cause the construct to explode, dealing massive physical damage to anybody nearby, and removing a stack of Strength of the Creator, which I'll explain in a second. To shatter iron constructs, assign a handful of DPS to deal with them. You'll want ranged DPS that can easily deal 5,000 damage in a single hit. Most classes should be able to accomplish this, but some will take longer than others. Warlocks can easily shatter constructs using Shadow Bolt, but it will take them 2+ seconds to cast. Hunters should also be able to shatter constructs with aim shot or multi-shot, but it may require a critical hit. The off-tank themselves may also be able to shatter constructs, especially if they're a Frost Death Knight, as Howling Blast deals significant damage. The final ability is Strength of the Creator. For every iron construct that is active, Ignis gains a stacking 15% damage increase. This can quickly become overwhelming for raids that are not efficiently dealing with the constructs, so slower raids should prioritize shattering them. Onto the boss fight itself. Before engaging Ignis, make sure to clear the area of any trash mobs, of course. The main tank should pull Ignis close to the pools of water found near the middle of the room. Ranged DPS should be positioned within range of the water so that they can easily reach and shatter the iron constructs when they become brittle. A hunter's misdirection pull can be very helpful in this situation, as it will allow the tank to already be in position from the start. Ignis himself has very few mechanics to worry about. At the beginning of the fight, the only notable thing to watch out for is flame jets. When Ignis starts casting this ability, finish your current cast and then start casting instant spells until it's finished in order to avoid being interrupted. Occasionally, Ignis will grab a player and toss them into his slag pot, incapacitating them and dealing damage over time for 10 seconds. Healers will want to pay extra attention to that player and keep them alive. If they manage to survive this, they'll receive a significant 150% haste buff when they are released. The main tank will need to constantly move around the arena to avoid standing in Scorch or forcing any other raid members to stand in it as well. While moving to avoid Scorch, you should always stay within range of the water to make positioning easier for everybody else. Roughly 20 seconds into the fight, Ignis will begin activating the iron constructs. Your raid leader should call this out when this happens, and the off-tank should pick them up as soon as possible, bringing them into the scorched area. If there is no Scorch, bring them to Ignis' feet in preparation for the next cast. After an iron construct has been in Scorch for 10 seconds, receiving a total of 10 stacks of heat, it will become molten. When a construct becomes molten, it resets all threat and will deal significantly more damage, as well as pulsing constant fire damage to anybody within 7 yards of it. The off-tank will need to pick it up immediately to prevent it causing havoc within the raid. If your raid wants to play it safer, you can use spells like Entangling Roots to root the iron constructs in place within Scorch. This reduces the damage the off-tank takes and relieves some pressure on the healers as well. You can also play it even safer by placing healers in the water so that when the construct becomes molten and resets threat, it will run straight to the healers and be immediately stunned when it touches the water. The off-tank should immediately move the construct away from the group and into the closest body of water found on either side of the arena. Once a molten construct touches the water, it will become brittle and become stunned. The off-tank should then get away from the brittle construct while a ranged DPS uses a hard-hitting attack to shatter it. The construct will only shatter if you deal at least 5,000 damage in a single hit, so any instant cast burst damage will be useful for this. Shattered iron constructs will explode, dealing AoE damage to anybody within 10 yards, so make sure the raid keeps their distance. Here are some of the main things that can go wrong during this fight. The off-tank can become overwhelmed by the constructs and takes more damage than they can handle. The off-tank cannot re-establish threat on the molten constructs, causing chaos within the raid. The iron constructs are awkwardly positioned, leading to significant raid damage. The DPS assigned to shattering the constructs is thrown into a slag pot. Make sure you have a backup plan for this. Healers cannot keep the incapacitated player alive through the slag pot, leading to deaths. Or the main tank fails to reposition the boss effectively between Scorchers, causing DPS to either die or be unable to DPS effectively. Finally, we have the achievements available from Ignis the Furnace Master. They are the Siege of Ulduar, defeat the bosses of the siege area in Ulduar. These bosses include Flame Leviathan, Razor Scale, Ignis the Furnace Master, and XT002 Deconstructor. Next is Hot Pocket. You simply have to survive Slag Pot for this achievement. There's no way to guarantee that you're the target of this spell, so you'll simply have to wait your turn. Next we have Shattered. shatter 2 iron constructs within 5 seconds of each other, and then kill Ignis. Easy enough, simply wait to have 2 constructs together, place them in Scorch together, and then take them to the water. Stoking the Furnace. Kill Ignis within 4 minutes of pulling him. This will likely not be much of a challenge in Classic, so you'll simply get this as your raid improves. And that is the complete guide on how to beat Ignis the Furnace Master in Ulduar. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please do consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.